Imagine that the voting rights of your country in the European Union are suspended. It's a real possibility nowadays, especially if you live in a country like Greece or Portugal or Ireland, countries with problematic budget deficits. These budget deficits are at the heart of the discussion here in Brussels at the October 2010 summit. It's a very complex story, and that's why we've decided to come to Mini Europe here in Brussels to explain this story in a language that more people can understand. It's an important story, especially if you have euros in your pocket.
The euro has acted as a sleeping pill, especially in good times. We now propose a system of timely awakening.
This is an original piece of the Berlin Wall. Of course, Europe has moved on significantly since the early 1990s. In 1991, the Maastricht Treaty was agreed, which called for the creation of the euro as a single currency. And Greece, of course, was one country that was allowed to join later. Some people are saying that the current debate going on about Eurozone governments is all down to Greece. Greece supposedly cheated its way into the Eurozone. But obviously so, the financial crisis has played a major role as well. And it's because of that financial crisis that these weaknesses in the Greek system and also in the system of other countries, especially in the south of Europe, were exposed. And that led to the debate that we're seeing now in Brussels.
At the beginning of the sovereign debt crisis, where Greece was central, we immediately said that there was a need for a mechanism of support, a mechanism of stability, which can prevent crises, but also provide for stability and growth.
At this very moment, there's a temporary mechanism for sanctions that can be applied against countries that transgress in the Eurozone. But France and Germany are very eager to have a permanent system of sanctions in place, which would kick in basically at the end of 2013, when the temporary sanctions expire.
Alle waren sich einig, dass dafür eine begrenzte Vertragsänderung notwendig ist. Wir haben nochmal festgehalten, dass das Bail-out-Verbot, also dass ein Land nicht für die Schulden eines anderen eintritt, erhalten bleibt. Der Artikel 125 wird nicht geändert, sondern der Krisenmechanismus gilt nur für den Fall, dass die Stabilität des Euro als Ganzes in Gefahr ist.
Le Conseil européen a pris aujourd'hui des décisions essentielles pour mettre en place, je dirais concrètement, le gouvernement économique européen dans la ligne stricte de l'accord franco-allemand de Deauville.
The deal at the summit here in Brussels is a very complex one. At the heart of it is a mechanism, a permanent mechanism of sanctions against member states that violate the rules for the Eurozone budget. The sanctions themselves are not going to be imposed by any of the European institutions. No, instead they will be imposed by the European Council, where the member states decide among themselves. The details on the sanctions also remain to be sorted out. It's now up to the Belgian president, the Belgian permanent president of the European Council, Herman van Rompuy, to do so in the next few months. And hopefully by Christmas they will have an agreement on exactly how voting rights for countries in the Eurozone can be suspended.
As you know, the problem of so-called voting rights was on the table. And so what we decided is that I will examine this later on in the framework I just described.
It's a dangerous idea of two reasons. The one is that many other member countries would ask for other changes. It's very, very difficult to isolate one theme. And the second reason is that, do you really imagine that all 27 member countries will sign up to a treaty change, making it possible for them to lose their voting rights?
Normally any treaty change in the European Union will have to be put up for a vote in a referendum in countries like Ireland and other countries, member states that choose to do so. There will have to be ratification of the treaty changes that are being discussed at the European Union level at the moment. Remains to be seen though if that actually will involve a referendum. Because the EU leaders are saying, well, these changes are not going to be major. Instead, they are going to be light, simplified is the official word. And that could mean that a national level parliamentary ratification of the treaty changes could be in place by the middle of 2013. When it comes to financial discussions in the European Union, the United Kingdom always likes to reserve a special seat for itself. And that's not any different this time around. One of the big discussions at the summit also is about the European budget, especially the budget for 2011. The European Commission and the European Parliament have asked for an increase of 6% in the EU's budget. They say that that money is essential because the EU is going to do more things. We're going to have more Europe. There will be, for instance, next year a European External Action Service, a diplomatic service. That'll be very costly, of course, but it's a plan that the UK already has signed off on. And of course, it needs to be paid for. But David Cameron arrived at the meeting and basically took the stage, took all the attention, especially early evening, saying that a rise of 6% for him is completely unacceptable.
I think that is completely unacceptable at a time when European countries, including the United Kingdom, are taking tough decisions on their budgets and having to cut some departments. It's completely wrong that European institutions should be spending more money on themselves in the way that they propose. 6% is not acceptable.
David Cameron must explain to the European citizens, not only to the British one, how to solve the problem we have, more Europe, also adopted by himself on the base of the Agenda 2020, on the External Action Service, on international engagement of the European Union for development and aid with less European money. So if he is prepared to tell us how to solve the miracle, he is welcome.
As the summit moved on, David Cameron's negotiating tactics became clear. He managed to find 10 other countries that signed up to his position. They effectively agree on an increase in the EU budget of 2011 of 2.91%. And that is less than half of what the European institutions had been asking for. In return, Cameron agreed to adopt the French-German proposal for a treaty change. And that effectively was the moment that a deal was reached. The details of the deal still have to be worked out by Herman Van Rompuy. And he now is expected to do so before the next summit in December. It could be that the suspension of voting rights as the ultimate sanction for budget violations in the Eurozone will then be put into place. Raymond Franken, EUX TV.